The woman sitting alone at the bar had been called invisible her entire career. Naval Criminal Investigative Service Special Agent Ramona Voss preferred it that way. Invisible people saw everything. And right now, she was watching a Navy SEAL with 18 years of service, 2 Silver Stars, and 3 dead Americans on his conscience laugh with his teammates like he did not have blood on his hands. 72 hours. That was how long she had to prove Senior Chief Garrett Huxley was a traitor before 12 more SEALs walked into an ambush and never came home. The rusty anchors smelled like spilled beer and old wood. Military memorabilia covered every wall, photographs of young men who had served and some who had died doing it. Ramona nursed a glass of water with lime, letting anyone who glanced her way assume it was something stronger. 4 months of undercover work had brought her here, to this rundown bar outside Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, watching the men of SEAL Team 7 celebrate another successful training cycle. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Perhaps you have seen someone underestimated who turned out to be exactly the person needed in that moment. Huxley sat at the center table, broad-shouldered and magnetic, the kind of man other men followed without question. His laugh carried across the room, rich and confident. To his left sat Master Chief Wade Thornton, his best friend of 15 years. To his right, the younger operators, Petty Officers Riggs, Castellano, and Volkov, hung on his every word like disciples at the feet of a prophet. Ramona had memorized their files. She knew their service records, their commendations, their families. She knew that Riggs had a temper, and Castellano sent half his paycheck to his mother in Albuquerque. She knew that Thornton's wife had left him 2 years ago, and that Volkov still called his grandmother in Ukraine every Sunday. And she knew that someone at that table had been selling operational intelligence to foreign contacts for 18 months. 3 American operatives were dead because of it. 3 funerals. 3 folded flags handed to 3 devastated families. One of those families had been her own. Ramona's younger brother Marcus had died 3 years ago in Fallujah. An ambush that should never have happened. Intelligence that someone had leaked. She had joined NCIS 6 months later, driven by a promise she had made at his grave. She would find out who had gotten him killed. She would make them answer for it. The investigation had led her here, to this bar, to these men. The evidence pointed to Huxley, but evidence and proof were different things. She needed more. She needed something irrefutable. She checked her watch. 9:47. Time to move. Ramona stood, wobbled slightly on her heels as if she had been drinking, and began walking toward the restroom. Her path took her directly past the SEAL table. She counted her steps. 12 more, and she would brush against their chairs. 8 more. 4. Her hip caught the edge of the table. A glass of beer wobbled and tipped, splashing across the wooden surface and onto Petty Officer Riggs's lap. Riggs shot to his feet. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Ramona's eyes went wide with practiced panic. "Oh my God, I am so sorry. I did not see. Let me get some napkins." She reached across the table, her hand brushing beneath the overhang where Huxley sat. The listening device attached to the underside of the wood with a soft click that no one heard over the noise of the bar. Riggs grabbed her wrist. "Stay quiet, idiot. You have done enough." The words hit like a slap. Ramona let her face crumple, let tears threaten at the corners of her eyes. She was good at this. She had spent 4 months being invisible, being dismissed, being nothing. "Hey, ease up." Castellano put a hand on Riggs's arm. "It was an accident." Riggs released her with a look of disgust. "Just get out of here." "I am sorry." Ramona backed away, shoulders hunched, the picture of humiliation. "I am really sorry." She did not look at Huxley as she retreated, but she felt his eyes on her, watching, assessing. Outside, the cool San Diego night wrapped around her like a blanket. Ramona walked 3 blocks before she allowed herself to breathe normally. She pulled out her phone and checked the signal. The listening device was transmitting clearly. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. Riggs had called her an idiot. Huxley had watched her like she was nothing, a minor annoyance to be forgotten by morning. None of them had any idea who she was or what she was capable of. 72 hours. That was all she had. She thought about Marcus, about his smile, his stupid jokes, the way he had texted her the night before his last mission. Love you, Mona. See you when I get back. He never came back. And now she knew that Huxley had been paid 2 days before that mission. The timeline fit. The pattern fit. Everything fit except the proof. Ramona got into her car and sat in the darkness. Somewhere behind her, in that bar, the man who had helped kill her brother was finishing his beer and laughing with his friends. Not for much longer. She started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. As she drove, she did not notice the dark sedan that pulled out 3 cars behind her. And she did not see Garrett Huxley standing at the bar window, watching her taillights disappear into the night with something cold and calculating in his eyes. Ramona's apartment was a study in controlled chaos. To anyone who might enter, it looked like the cluttered home of an overworked IT contractor. Takeout containers on the counter, laundry in a basket by the door, a laptop open to spreadsheets that meant nothing. But behind the bedroom closet, hidden by a false panel she had installed herself, was the real workspace. Photographs connected by red string, timelines written in her careful handwriting, financial records that had taken months to obtain. And at the center of it all, a photograph of Senior Chief Garrett Huxley in his dress uniform, smiling at the camera like a man with nothing to hide. She plugged in her earpiece and activated the listening device feed. Static crackled for a moment. Then voices emerged. The SEALs were still at the bar, their conversation flowing with the easy rhythm of men who trusted each other completely. Thornton was talking. You see the new batch coming through BUD/S? Half of them will ring the bell before Hell Week. Riggs laughed. Remember when Castellano almost rang out on day 3? I was not going to ring out. Castellano's voice carried a hint of old embarrassment. I was just resting my hand on the bell. The table erupted in laughter. Ramona listened for Huxley, waiting for him to speak. When he did, his voice was smooth and unbothered. Leave the kid alone. He made it through. That is what matters. She recorded everything, even the meaningless banter. Sometimes the meaningless moments revealed the most. A slip of the tongue, a reference that did not quite fit. She had learned patience in this work. Patience and the willingness to wait for the one moment that changed everything. The conversation shifted to the upcoming operation. Tuesday's mission. Ramona leaned closer to her laptop, adjusting the volume. Thornton lowered his voice. Command is keeping this one tight. Full briefing Monday morning, but from what I hear, it is a high-value target extraction. 12 operators in and out. Huxley responded casually. Standard package. We have done 100 of these. But there was something in his tone, a slight tension that Ramona had learned to recognize over 4 months of listening. He knew more than he was saying. He always did. She made a note in her file. Tuesday operation. HVT extraction. 12 operators. 12 men who would die if she could not prove what Huxley was doing in time. The feed continued for another hour before the SEALs called a night. Ramona sat in the darkness of her apartment, the glow of her laptop the only light, and let herself think about Marcus. He had been 26 when he died, for years younger than her, but somehow always the one who made her laugh. He had followed their father into the military, choosing the SEALs because he wanted to be the best. And he had been. His instructors said he was a natural. His teammates said he was the kind of operator you wanted beside you when things went bad. Things had gone bad in Fallujah. An ambush that intelligence said was impossible. Enemy fighters who knew exactly where the team would be and exactly when they would arrive. Marcus had died holding a position so his teammates could extract. He had saved 4 lives with his sacrifice, but he should never have been in that position. Someone had told the enemy where to find them. Ramona pulled out the photograph she kept in her wallet. Marcus in his dress whites, grinning at the camera during his graduation from BUD/S. She had been there that day, screaming herself hoarse with pride. I am close, she whispered to the photograph. I am so close. Morning came too quickly. Ramona showered, dressed in her contractor disguise, and drove onto base with the badge that identified her as Diana Chun, Network Security Specialist. The cover had taken months to establish. References that checked out. a work history that held up under scrutiny. She was just another civilian face in the endless stream of contractors who kept the military running. Her official job gave her access to most of the base, including the administrative buildings where she could observe the comings and goings of SEAL Team 7 without raising suspicion. She had learned their patterns: when they trained, when they ate, when they gathered in the team room to plan operations. Today she positioned herself near the communications building, pretending to troubleshoot a network junction box while watching the team area across the quad. At 1100 hours, she saw Huxley emerge from the team building. He walked with purpose toward the far end of the compound, phone pressed to his ear. Ramona followed at a distance, keeping buildings between them. She could not hear his conversation, but she watched his body language. Tense shoulders, quick glances around, the posture of a man who did not want to be overheard. He stopped near the motor pool, partially hidden by a row of vehicles. His mouth moved rapidly. At one point he nodded, then checked his watch. The call lasted 4 minutes before he pocketed the phone and walked back toward the team building. Ramona memorized the time and location, another data point in the pattern she was building. She was so focused on watching Huxley that she did not notice Master Chief Thornton until he was standing directly beside her. Network problems? His voice made her jump. She recovered quickly, gesturing at the junction box. Intermittent signal drops, trying to isolate the source. Thornton studied her with eyes that had spent 2 decades assessing threats. Ramona kept her expression neutral, her body language open and unthreatening. "You're new," he said. "I've not seen you around before. Started 3 weeks ago. Diana Chun." She extended her hand. Thornton shook it briefly. His grip was firm, testing. "This area is pretty close to our team spaces. Sensitive operations. I go where the network takes me." She smiled, keeping it professional. "Should be done in about 20 minutes. He held her gaze for a long moment. Something flickered behind his eyes. Suspicion, maybe, or just the habitual caution of a man trained to notice things that did not belong. "Just make sure you stay in authorized areas," he said finally. "We take security seriously around here." "Absolutely, Master Chief." He walked away, but Ramona felt his attention linger. She had been careful for 4 months. Invisible, forgettable. But now Thornton had noticed her. And men like Thornton did not forget faces. She finished her pretend repairs and retreated to the safety of her cover office. Her hands were steady as she typed meaningless reports, but her mind was racing. 68 hours until Tuesday's operation. Thornton was watching her now, and somewhere on this base, Huxley was preparing to send 12 American operators to their deaths. She thought about the bar, about Riggs calling her an idiot, about Huxley's cold eyes watching her drive away. They had no idea what was coming. The classified files were supposed to be beyond her access level. But Ramona had spent 6 years in naval intelligence before transferring to NCIS, and she still knew people who owed her favors. An encrypted email, a secure file transfer, and suddenly she was looking at the operational records she had been hunting for months. The Fallujah mission, Marcus's last operation. She read through the details with clinical detachment, forcing herself to see it as data rather than the moment her world had shattered. The team had been tasked with capturing a high-value target in a compound on the outskirts of the city. Intelligence indicated minimal resistance. A quick extraction. Instead, they had walked into a killing field. Enemy fighters had been waiting in prepared positions. They knew the approach routes. They knew the timing. They knew everything. 4 SEALs had made it out. Marcus and 2 others had not. Ramona scrolled to the intelligence support section and felt her blood turn to ice. The pre-mission briefing had been coordinated through Naval Special Warfare Command. The intelligence packet had been assembled by a support team that included one senior chief, Garrett Huxley. She had suspected, she had theorized, but seeing his name in the official record, knowing he had touched the information that got her brother killed, made it real in a way it had not been before. Her phone buzzed. A text from her handler, Commander Elise Whitmore. Status update requested. Ramona typed back. Making progress. Need more time. The response came immediately. Clock is ticking. Tuesday is not flexible. She knew that. God, she knew that. The listening device continued to feed her information throughout the day. Most of it was useless. Training schedules, complaints about equipment, the usual chatter of men who spent their lives in each other's pockets. But late in the afternoon, she caught something. Huxley was talking to Volkov about the upcoming mission. Standard insertion, Huxley said. Fast row from the hellos, secure the perimeter, grab the package, and extract. Nothing we have not done before. Volkov sounded less confident. I heard the intelligence on this one is shaky. Conflicting reports about enemy strength in the area. Huxley's voice hardened. The intelligence is fine. I have seen the packet. Trust me. Trust me. The words echoed in Ramona's ears. How many times had Huxley said those words to men who followed him without question? How many of them had died because they trusted him? She needed to get closer. The surveillance was giving her pieces, but not the whole picture. She needed someone on the inside who could tell her what she was missing. Castellano. He had defended her at the bar. A small kindness, but suggested a conscience. Maybe he was the crack in the wall she needed. Ramona found him at the base gym the next morning. He was alone at the bench press, working through sets with methodical precision. She positioned herself at a nearby machine and began a workout routine designed to look casual. 20 minutes passed before she manufactured her opportunity. She approached the water fountain at the same moment he did, nearly colliding. Sorry, she said. Seems like I'm always bumping into people. Castellano looked at her, recognition flickering in his eyes. You're the woman from the bar. The one Riggs yelled at. That is me. Diana, Chun. She held out her hand. I work in network security. He shook it. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. Lucio Castellano. I wanted to thank you, she said, for speaking up the other night. You did not have to do that. Castellano shrugged. Riggs can be intense. He does not mean anything by it, but sometimes he takes things too far. It is fine. I have dealt with worse. She allowed a small smile. Guys like that, they see someone like me and assume I'm nobody. It is actually kind of useful. How so? People tell you things when they think you do not matter. She kept her tone light. They let their guard down. Say things they would never say to someone they consider a threat. Castellano studied her for a moment. There was intelligence in his eyes, a thoughtfulness that set him apart from Riggs's blunt aggression. You are smarter than you let on, he said. Is that a compliment? An observation. He grabbed his towel. I should get back to it. Training cycle waits for no one. Of course. She stepped aside. But hey, if you ever want to grab coffee sometime, I know a place off base that does not water down their espresso. He hesitated. She could see him weighing the offer against regulations about fraternizing with contractors. Finally, he nodded. Maybe. I will think about it. He walked away, and Ramona let out a slow breath. It was a start, a thread she could pull. Back at her workstation, she continued monitoring the surveillance feed. The afternoon brought another private phone call from Huxley. She watched from across the quad as he walked to the same spot near the motor pool, the same furtive body language, the same quick glances. This time she was ready. She had positioned a directional microphone earlier that morning, hidden in a maintenance access panel. It was a risk. If anyone found it, her cover would be blown. But she needed to know what he was saying. The audio was faint, broken by distance and interference, but she caught fragments. Tuesday, confirmed, extraction point. Same terms as before. Then, clearly, chillingly, they will never see it coming. Ramona's hands trembled as she saved the recording. It was not enough for a conviction. Not enough to bring to Commander Whitmore with certainty. But it was more than she had before. She packed up her equipment and headed for the parking lot. The afternoon sun was warm on her face, but she felt cold inside. Tuesday was 60 hours away. 12 men were counting down to an ambush they did not know was coming. And somewhere behind her, watching from a window in the team building, Garrett Huxley was making another phone call. This one about the IT contractor who seemed to be everywhere he looked. The voice on the other end asked a question. Huxley answered, Not yet, but keep an eye on her. Something about her does not feel right. Castellano called the next morning. The coffee place you mentioned, he said. I looked it up. How about 1100 hours? Ramona kept her voice casual despite the surge of adrenaline. Sound good. I will see you there. The cafe was called Coastal Grounds, a small shop 3 miles from base where civilians outnumbered military and conversations could happen without watchful eyes. Ramona arrived early and took a table near the back where she could see the entrance and the rear exit. Castellano walked in at exactly 11, scanning the room with the automatic alertness of a man trained to assess threats. He spotted her and made his way over, ordering a black coffee at the counter before sitting down. "Thanks for coming," Ramona said. He shrugged. "Figured I owed you after the other night. Besides, I do not get off base much. Nice to see something other than sand and concrete." They made small talk for a few minutes. He told her about growing up in Albuquerque, about his mother who still worried about him even though he had been a SEAL for 6 years. She offered carefully constructed lies about her fake life as Diana Chun, the network security contractor from Seattle. Then she steered the conversation where she needed it to go. "So what is it like," she asked, "being on a team like that? The brotherhood everyone talks about." Castellano's expression softened. "It is real. These guys, they're not just teammates. They are family. We would die for each other without hesitation." "Even Riggs?" He laughed. "Even Riggs. He is a hothead, but when things get bad, there is no one I would rather have beside me." He paused. "Most of the guys are like that. Solid. Dependable. You know exactly who they are. Most of them?" The question hung in the air. Castellano looked into his coffee cup, and Ramona saw something flicker across his face. Doubt, maybe, or the beginning of it. "Senior Chief Huxley," he said slowly. "He is different. Not in a bad way, just, I do not know. He's been off lately. Stressed about something. His wife is sick, right?" Ramona kept her tone sympathetic. "I heard someone mention it. Yeah, some kind of degenerative thing. He does not talk about it much, but you can tell it is eating at him." Castellano shook his head. "Medical bills are brutal. Even with military coverage, there are things they do not pay for. Experimental treatments. Specialists. That must be hard. Watching someone you love suffer and not being able to do anything about it." Castellano nodded. He has been taking extra assignments, consulting work on the side, trying to bring in more money. He looked up. "Actually, I probably should not be telling you this. It is not really my business. Of course. I am sorry. I did not mean to pry. But she had what she needed. Extra assignments. Consulting work. The cover story Huxley used to explain money that came from selling American lives to foreign enemies." They talked for another 20 minutes before Castellano checked his watch and said he needed to get back to base. At the door, he paused. "Hey," he said, "this was nice. Maybe we could do it again sometime." "I would like that." She watched him drive away, then sat in her car and made notes on everything he had told her. The picture was becoming clearer. Huxley was smart. He had built a cover story that explained the money, explained the stress, explained everything. But cover stories had holes if you knew where to look. The drive back to her apartment took 15 minutes. She was thinking about her next move, planning how to get closer to the evidence she needed, when she noticed the sedan in her rearview mirror. Dark blue, tinted windows, keeping exactly 3 car lengths behind her through every turn. Ramona's training kicked in. She took a random right turn, then a left, then doubled back toward the main road. The sedan followed, matching her route with professional precision. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Someone was following her. Someone who knew what they were doing. She could not lead them to her apartment. Could not let them see the hidden room behind her closet, the evidence she had spent months collecting. Instead, she drove to a shopping center and parked in a crowded lot, watching her mirrors as the sedan pulled into a space 50 yards away. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then the sedan's engine started, and it pulled out of the lot, disappearing into traffic. A warning. That was what this was. Someone wanted her to know she was being watched. Ramona drove a circuitous route home, doubling back twice more before she was satisfied no one was following. But even as she locked her apartment door behind her, she could not shake the feeling of eyes on her back. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Miss Chun." The voice was male, distorted by some kind of modulator. "You have been asking questions, looking into things that do not concern you. Who is this? A friend or an enemy? That depends entirely on what you do next." There was a pause. Some secrets are worth killing for. Remember that. The line went dead. Ramona stood in her dark apartment, phone clutched in her trembling hand. 54 hours until Tuesday. Someone knew she was investigating. Someone was trying to scare her off. It was not going to work. She pulled out her secure laptop and began typing a message to Commander Whitmore. The situation had escalated. She needed backup, resources, something. But even as she wrote, she knew the response would be the same. Budget constraints. Limited personnel. You are on your own. She had always been on her own. That was not going to change now. Ramona walked to her hidden workspace and stared at Huxley's photograph. 3 dead operatives, her brother among them. 12 more marked for death on Tuesday. Someone was trying to stop her from finding the truth. That meant she was getting close. She pulled out a new burner phone and began planning her next move. If they wanted to play games, she would show them how the game was really played. The rusty anchor was busier than usual for Saturday night. Ramona had chosen a different disguise this time. Different hair, darker makeup, a worn leather jacket that made her look like a biker's girlfriend rather than an IT contractor. She needed to see Huxley's meeting with his contact, and she could not afford to be recognized. She positioned herself at the far end of the bar, nursing a beer she had no intention of drinking, and waited. Huxley arrived at 9:15. He was alone, which was unusual. The other SEALs were nowhere in sight. He took a corner booth with his back to the wall and ordered whiskey neat, then sat watching the door with the patience of a predator. 20 minutes later, a man walked in. Civilian clothes, but Ramona recognized the bearing immediately. Military or former military. He moved with the controlled economy of someone who had spent years learning how to kill efficiently. The man slid into the booth across from Huxley. They did not shake hands, did not smile. This was not a friendly reunion. Ramona pulled out her phone and pretended to scroll through social media while angling the camera toward their table. The lighting was poor and the distance was too great for clear images, but she captured what she could. 2 men meeting in a dark bar. One of them a decorated Navy SEAL. The other, someone who should not exist. She watched Huxley reach into his jacket and withdraw a small envelope. He slid it across the table. The contact picked it up, thumbed through the contents, and nodded. Then he reached into his own pocket and produced something that Huxley quickly pocketed. The exchange took less than 30 seconds. The contact stood, said something Ramona could not hear, and walked out through the back exit. Huxley remained in the booth, finishing his whiskey with the calm of a man who had just completed a routine transaction. Because for him, that was exactly what it was. Routine. Normal. Another envelope of intelligence traded for another payment that would help cover his wife's medical bills while Americans died overseas. Ramona waited until Huxley left before making her way outside. She circled to the back of the bar, hoping to catch a glimpse of the contact's vehicle, but the parking lot was empty. Whoever he was, he had vanished like smoke. She was heading back toward the street when a figure stepped out of the shadows. Riggs. He was drunk. She could smell the alcohol from 10 feet away. But drunk or not, he was still a trained killer, and the look in his eyes was anything but friendly. "I know you," he said. "The clumsy contractor. Diana Chun." Ramona kept her voice steady. "I think you have had a few too many. I should call you a cab." "You're following him." Riggs took a step closer. "I have seen you around base. Always watching. Always in places you should not be." "Who are you really?" "I told you. Network security. I go where the work takes me." He grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You are lying. I can always tell when someone is lying. Let go of me." "Or what?" He laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "You going to report me? File a complaint?" He leaned in close, his breath hot against her face. "People who stick their noses where they do not belong tend to have accidents around here. You understand what I am saying?" Ramona understood perfectly. This was not just intimidation. This was a threat backed by the full capability of a man trained in ways to kill that most people could not imagine. She forced herself to stay calm. "I am not looking for trouble. I was just getting some air." Riggs studied her for a long moment. Then he released her arm with a shove that sent her stumbling backward. "Stay away from the team," he said. "Stay away from Senior Chief Huxley. And stay away from me." He walked back into the bar without looking back. Ramona stood in the darkness, heart pounding, arm throbbing where he had grabbed her. The photographs on her phone were useless. Blurry shapes in bad lighting. Nothing that would convince anyone of anything. She had risked everything and gained nothing. The drive home was a blur of self-recrimination. For months of work, for months of patience and planning and careful maneuvering. And she was no closer to the proof she needed than she had been on day one. 48 hours. That was all she had left. 48 hours before 12 SEALs walked into an ambush because she had failed. Her apartment felt emptier than usual. She sat on the floor of her hidden workspace, surrounded by photographs and documents and red string connecting dots that refused to form a clear picture. She called Commander Whitmore on the secure line. "I need backup," she said. "I need resources. I cannot do this alone." Whitmore's voice was sympathetic but firm. "Ramona, I have told you. The budget is not there. I have 3 other active investigations and half the staff I need. You're the best agent I have, which is why you're on this case. But I cannot give you what I do not have." "Then what am I supposed to do?" "Your job." Whitmore paused. "I believe in you. You have gotten further than anyone else on this. Do not give up now." The line went dead. Ramona sat in the darkness, staring at Huxley's photograph. For the first time since she had started this investigation, she felt the weight of it crushing her. The impossibility, the loneliness, the certainty that she was going to fail. She thought about Marcus, about the promise she had made at his grave, about the 3 families who had received folded flags and empty condolences while the man responsible laughed with his teammates at a bar. Giving up was not an option. It had never been an option. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Castellano. "I need to see you. Tomorrow morning. It is important." His response came 2 minutes later. "Is everything okay?" "No, but it will be." She did not sleep that night. Instead, she sat in her workspace, reviewing every piece of evidence, every recording, every photograph. Somewhere in this mess was the answer she needed. Somewhere was the thread that would unravel Garrett Huxley's carefully constructed lies. She just had to find it before time ran out. Ramona had not slept in 36 hours. Her eyes burned and her hands trembled from too much coffee, but she forced herself to focus. The financial records spread across her laptop screen held the answer. They had to. She had pulled every transaction she could access from Huxley's accounts. Military pay deposits, mortgage payments, credit card bills for his wife's medications. Everything looked normal on the surface. A family struggling with medical debt, living paycheck to paycheck like millions of others. But there were anomalies. Small deposits from a consulting company called Meridian Strategic Solutions. The amounts varied, never large enough to trigger automatic flags. $2,000 here, $3,500 there. Over 18 months, they added up to nearly $90,000. Ramona dug into Meridian Strategic Solutions and found a ghost. A company registered in Delaware with no employees, no physical address, and no apparent business operations. A shell designed to move money without leaving fingerprints. She cross-referenced the deposit dates with compromised operations. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in a darkroom. March of last year, a deposit of $2,800. 3 days later, a CIA asset in Yemen was killed in an ambush. July, a deposit of $4,000. 1 week later, a joint special operations raid in Syria went sideways. 2 operators wounded, target escaped. October, a deposit of $3,200. 2 days later, her brother's team walked into a killing field in Fallujah. Ramona stared at the screen, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. $2,300. That was what Garrett Huxley had received for the information that killed Marcus. $2,300 for her brother's life. She wanted to scream. She wanted to put her fist through the wall. Instead, she saved the files and kept working. The deposits continued after Marcus died. More operations compromised. More Americans killed or wounded. And through it all, Huxley kept collecting his payments and laughing with his teammates at the rusty anchor like nothing had changed. Her phone buzzed. "Castellano, I am at the coffee shop. Where are you?" She had forgotten about their meeting. Ramona splashed water on her face, changed into clean clothes, and drove to coastal grounds in a daze. Castellano was waiting at their usual table. His expression shifted to concern when he saw her. "You look terrible. What did you last sleep?" "It does not matter." She sat down across from him and took a breath. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting until I am finished." He nodded slowly. "Okay." Ramona told him everything. Her real name, her job with NCIS, the investigation into the intelligence leak, the 3 dead operatives. Marcus. She watched his face as she spoke, looking for the moment when he would shut down, defend his team, refuse to believe. It never came. When she finished, Castellano sat in silence for a long moment. His coffee had gone cold. His hands are clasped on the table, knuckles white. "You are telling me," he said carefully, "that Senior Chief Huxley has been selling intelligence to foreign contacts, that he is responsible for the deaths of American service members, that Tuesday's operation is compromised." "Yes." "And you have proof?" "Financial records linking him to payments that coincide with compromised operations. Surveillance recordings of him making suspicious calls. Photographs of him meeting with an unknown contact last night at the Rusty Anchor." She paused. "But is not enough. Not enough to take to command without being dismissed as circumstantial. I need more." Castellano's jaw tightened. "Huxley trained me. He wrote my recommendation for advancement. He stood up at my promotion ceremony and told everyone I was going to be one of the great ones." "I know, and I am sorry." He shook his head. "Do not be sorry. Be right." He looked at her with something hard in his eyes. "If what you're saying is true, then he has betrayed everything we stand for, everything I believed about him. I need to see it for myself." Ramona had hoped for this, had planned for it, but hearing him say the words still felt like a victory. "I need access to the team-ready room," she said. "Huxley keeps a personal locker there. If he is communicating with his contact, there will be evidence. A burner phone, documents, something." Castellano exhaled slowly. "Do you have any idea what you are asking? If we get caught, my career is over. Yours too, probably. If you're wrong about Huxley, I'm not wrong." He studied her face. The exhaustion, the determination, the grief that she could not quite hide. "Your brother," he said quietly. "He was one of the ones killed?" Ramona nodded. She did not trust herself to speak. Castellano was silent for another long moment. Then he stood up. "Tonight, 0200. Meet me at the East Maintenance Gate. I will get you inside." "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet." He dropped a $10 bill on the table. "If you are right, we are about to destroy a man's life. And if you are wrong, we are about to destroy our own." He walked out without looking back. Ramona sat alone in the coffee shop, her heart pounding with something that felt almost like hope. 40 hours until Tuesday. 40 hours to find the evidence that would prove Huxley's guilt and save 12 lives. She thought about Marcus, about the $2,300 that his life had been worth to a traitor, about the promise she had made and the price she was willing to pay to keep it. Tonight, she would have her answers. One way or another, this ended tonight. The East Maintenance Gate was unlocked when Ramona arrived at 0155. Castellano was waiting in the shadows, dressed in dark civilian clothes, his face unreadable in the dim light. "You came," he said. "Did you think I would not?" He shook his head. "I thought you might come to your senses. Realize this is insane. Sanity is overrated." They moved through the base in silence, staying off the main paths, using the routes Castellano had memorized over 6 years of late-night runs and early morning training. The team compound was quiet at this hour. Most of the operators were home with families or sleeping in the barracks before the mission briefing. The ready room was in a low concrete building at the center of the compound. Castellano used his access card to open the outer door, then led Ramona down a hallway lit by emergency lights to a second door marked Authorized Personnel Only. His hand hesitated over the keypad. "Once we go in there, there is no going back. You understand that?" "I understood that 4 months ago." He punched in the code. The lock clicked open. The ready room smelled like sweat and gun oil, the permanent scent of men who trained for war. Rows of lockers lined the walls, each one marked with a name and rank. Weapons racks stood in neat rows. A large table dominated the center of the room, covered with maps and operational documents. Ramona found Huxley's locker in the back corner. Senior Chief G. Huxley. 18 years of service reduced to a metal box with a combination lock. She pulled out her picks. 4 months of surveillance had given her opportunities to watch Huxley open this lock dozens of times. She knew the combination by heart, but picks were faster and left no evidence. 30 seconds later, the lock clicked open. Inside was the usual gear: spare uniforms, personal effects, a photograph of Huxley and his wife on their wedding day, both of them young and smiling, unaware of the darkness that would eventually consume their lives. Ramona felt along the back of the locker, searching for hidden compartments. Her fingers found a seam in the metal backing. She pressed, and a small panel popped open. Behind it was a burner phone. She powered it on. The screen glowed in the darkness, revealing a simple interface with no apps, no photographs, no identifying information. Just a contacts list with a single entry. Phoenix. Ramona scrolled through the message history. Dates, times, coordinates, target identifications. Everything Huxley had passed through his contact over the past 18 months, documented in cold digital text. The most recent message was from yesterday. Tuesday extraction confirmed. 12 operators. Primary LZ coordinates attached. Expect full payment upon completion. The response from Phoenix was equally clinical. Acknowledged. Assets in position. No survivors. No survivors. Ramona read the words again, making sure she understood. This was not just intelligence gathering. This was a planned massacre. Huxley was not selling information to the highest bidder. He was actively coordinating the deaths of his own teammates. She photographed every message, every contact, every piece of data on the phone. Her hands were steady despite the horror of what she was reading. Later, she would process the emotions. Right now, she needed evidence. Castellano stood guard at the door, checking the hallway every few seconds. How much longer? Almost done. She was reaching to close the hidden compartment when she heard footsteps in the corridor. Castellano's voice was barely a whisper. Someone is coming. They killed the lights on the phone and pressed themselves against the wall behind a row of lockers. The ready room door opened. A flashlight beam swept across the space. Ramona recognized the silhouette. Master Chief Wade Thornton. He moved through the room with the methodical precision of a man conducting a security check. The flashlight lingered on the weapons racks, the map table, the rows of lockers. Ramona held her breath as the beam passed inches from her face. Thornton paused at Huxley's locker. The door was closed, the lock back in place, but something made him hesitate. He reached out and touched the metal, his fingers tracing the edges like he was looking for something out of place. 10 seconds passed. 20. Ramona's lungs burned from holding her breath. Finally, Thornton turned and walked back toward the door. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, growing fainter until they disappeared entirely. Castellano exhaled slowly. That was too close. We need to go. Now. They slipped out of the ready room and retraced their route through the compound. The east gate was still unlocked. 5 minutes later, they were in Ramona's car, driving away from the base with evidence that would destroy a decorated Navy SEAL and save 12 lives. Castellano stared out the window, his jaw tight. Those messages. Tuesday's operation. He's going to get them all killed. Not if we stop him. How? We cannot just walk into command and accuse a senior chief of treason based on a burner phone we stole from his locker. Ramona gripped the steering wheel. We need someone with authority. Someone the team will listen to. Someone who can confront Huxley directly and force him to answer for what he has done. Castellano turned to look at her. You're talking about Thornton. He is the Master Chief. Huxley's best friend. If anyone can get through to the team, it is him. And if he does not believe us, then we go to Commander Whitmore and pray she can mobilize assets in time. But Thornton is our best chance. The team trusts him. They will listen to him. Castellano was quiet for a long moment. Thornton and Huxley go back 15 years. They have saved each other's lives more times than I can count. asking him to believe his best friend is a traitor. I know. She pulled into the parking lot of her apartment complex. But 36 hours from now, 12 men are going to walk into an ambush. If we do not convince Thornton, they're all going to die. She handed Castellano a flash drive containing everything. The financial records, the surveillance recordings, the photographs from the burner phone. All of it. Get some sleep, she said. Tomorrow we tell Thornton the truth. And then we find out what kind of man he really is. Ramona spent the night decrypting the remaining files from Huxley's burner phone. The deeper she dug, the worse it got. Phoenix was not just a contact. Phoenix was a handler. The messages revealed a relationship that stretched back nearly 2 years, beginning with small requests for unclassified information and escalating to full operational packages. Huxley had been groomed, cultivated, and turned into an asset so valuable that his handlers were willing to pay premium prices for American blood. The Tuesday operation was the culmination of everything. A high-value target extraction that would put 12 SEALs in a confined location with predetermined approach routes and extraction points. Phoenix's people would be waiting. The ambush would be swift and total. No survivors meant no witnesses, no questions, no investigation that might lead back to the source of the leak. Ramona assembled a comprehensive briefing package. Financial records showing the shell company payments. Surveillance recordings of Huxley's suspicious behavior. Photographs of the bar meeting with his contact. And the burner phone messages, damning in their clinical precision. It was enough. It had to be enough. She called Commander Whitmore at 0600. I have it, Ramona said. Everything we need. Financial trail, communications, operational compromise. Huxley is the leak, and Tuesday's mission is a trap. Whitmore's voice was sharp with urgency. How solid is the evidence? Solid enough for a court-martial. Solid enough to stop the operation. There was a pause on the line. I can have a team at Coronado by tomorrow morning. But that cuts it close. The mission briefing is at 0800 Tuesday. Then we need to move faster. I am going to approach Master Chief Thornton today. If he believes us, he can delay the briefing, buy us time. Thornton is Huxley's best friend. You think he will turn on him? I think he is a man who took an oath to protect his country and his teammates. When he sees what Huxley has done, he will do the right thing. And if he does not, then I will find another way. Ramona gripped the phone tighter. I did not spend 4 months on this to watch 12 men die, because I was afraid to take a risk. Whitmore was quiet for a moment. Be careful, Ramona. If Huxley suspects you are closing in, he will not hesitate to eliminate the threat. You have seen what he is capable of. I know exactly what he is capable of. That is why I am going to stop him. She ended the call and began preparing for the most important conversation of her life. Thornton lived off base in a small house in Imperial Beach, 15 minutes south of Coronado. Ramona drove there in the late afternoon, timing her arrival for when he would be home from the day's training, but before the evening activities that often took operators back to base or to bars. His truck was in the driveway. She parked across the street and sat for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Everything depended on the next hour. If Thornton believed her, they could stop Huxley before Tuesday's massacre. If he did not, she would have to find another way, and time was running out. She walked to the front door and knocked. Thornton answered in civilian clothes, a beer in his hand and suspicion in his eyes. He recognized her immediately. The contractor, Diana Chun. Actually, Ramona said, my name is Ramona Voss. I'm a special agent with NCIS. I need to talk to you about Garrett Huxley. The suspicion in his eyes hardened into something colder. I think you should leave. Master Chief, please. Lives are at stake. 12 of your men are going to die on Tuesday if you do not hear me out. He did not move, did not invite her in, but he did not close the door either. Ramona pressed forward. I have evidence that Senior Chief Huxley has been selling operational intelligence to foreign contact for the past 18 months. I have financial records, surveillance recordings, and communications from a burner phone I recovered from his locker last night. Tuesday's extraction is compromised. The enemy knows exactly where your team will be and exactly when they will arrive. Thornton's face was stone. You expect me to believe that my best friend, a man I have served with for 15 years, is a traitor. Based on what? Some contractor who has been snooping around base for months? I'm not a contractor. I am NCIS. And I am not asking you to take my word for it. She held up the flash drive. Everything is on here. Financial records from a shell company called Meridian Strategic Solutions. Deposits that coincide with every compromised operation over the past 18 months. Messages to a handler called Phoenix detailing Tuesday's mission parameters. The last message says no survivors, Master Chief. They are planning to kill everyone. Something flickered in Thornton's eyes. Doubt maybe, or the first crack in 15 years of trust. My brother was Petty Officer Marcus Voss, Ramona continued. He died in Fallujah 3 years ago. An ambush that should never have happened. Huxley was paid $2,300 2 days before that mission. She felt her voice crack, but pushed through. I joined NCIS to find out who got my brother killed. And I found him. He is your best friend. And in 30 hours, he is going to do the same thing to 12 more men unless you help me stop him. Thornton stood motionless in the doorway. The beer in his hand had gone forgotten. His eyes searched her face, looking for deception, looking for anything that would let him dismiss her as a liar or a lunatic. He found neither. Come inside, he said finally. Show me everything. Ramona followed him into the house, her heart pounding with something that felt like the beginning of hope. 28 hours until Tuesday. 28 hours to convince a man to betray his best friend and save 12 lives. The clock was ticking, and for the first time since this began, Ramona was not alone. Thornton read everything in silence. The financial records, the surveillance logs, the photographs, the burner phone messages. His face revealed nothing as he scrolled through page after page of evidence that dismantled 15 years of friendship and trust. Ramona sat across from him at the kitchen table, watching, waiting, afraid to breathe. Castellano had wanted to come, but she had insisted on doing this alone. Thornton needed to process this without feeling ambushed by multiple accusers. An hour passed, then another. Outside the window, the sun dropped toward the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Finally, Thornton set down the tablet and looked at her. His eyes were wet, though no tears had fallen. The eyes of a man whose world had just collapsed around him. I introduced him to Catherine, he said quietly. His wife. They met at a barbecue at my house 12 years ago. I was the best man at their wedding. Ramona said nothing. There was nothing to say. When she got sick, he was devastated. Thornton's voice cracked. I watched him fall apart. Watched him take extra shifts, sell his truck, do everything he could to pay for her treatments. I offered to help. He would not take my money. Said he had it covered. He did have it covered, Ramona said gently. Just not the way you thought. Thornton picked up the tablet again, staring at the messages to Phoenix. No survivors. He read the words aloud, as if hearing them might make them less real. He is going to kill them. Riggs. Castellano. Volkov. Many is trained, led, bled with. He is going to watch them die. Unless we stop him. Thornton looked up at her. How? We cannot just arrest him. I do not have that authority. And if we go to command with this, there will be an investigation, hearings, delays. Tuesday will come and go before anyone makes a decision. Then we do not go to command. We confront him directly. Tomorrow morning, before the briefing. You, me, and Castellano. We present the evidence and give him a choice. Confess and cooperate, or face exposure in front of his entire team. And if he runs, he will not run. Ramona leaned forward. His wife is here. His life is here. Running would mean abandoning everything. He'll try to talk his way out, deny it, make excuses. But when he sees the evidence, when he realizes there is no way out, he will break. You seem very sure of that. I have spent 4 months studying him, learning how he thinks, how he operates. He is arrogant. He believes he is smarter than everyone around him. That arrogance will be his downfall. Thornton was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, staring out at the fading light. I trusted him, he said, more than anyone in my life. I would have died for him without hesitation. I know, and I am sorry. He turned to face her. Your brother, Marcus. I remember him. Good operator. Solid instincts. He had a future in the teams. Ramona felt her throat tighten. Yes, he did. Thornton nodded slowly, something hardening in his expression. The grief was still there, but it was being replaced by something else. Resolve. Determination. The cold fury of a warrior who had been betrayed. Tomorrow morning, he said. 0700. We meet at the team compound before anyone else arrives. I will make sure Huxley is there. Thank you, Master Chief. Do not thank me. He walked to the door and held it open, his signal that the conversation was over. If you are right about this, I am about to destroy a man I love like a brother. If you are wrong, I am about to destroy my own career and reputation. Either way, there is nothing to thank me for. Ramona stood and walked to the door. She paused beside him. I'm not wrong. For your sake and mine, I hope that is true. She drove back to her apartment in the gathering darkness, her mind racing through tomorrow's confrontation. Thornton was on board. Castellano was ready. Commander Whitmore's team would arrive in the morning. All the pieces were in place. 20 hours until Tuesday's briefing. 20 hours until Huxley would learn that his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Ramona's blood went cold. She pulled over and stared at the message, her heart hammering against her ribs. Someone knew. Someone had been watching. A second message appeared. Catherine Huxley is a good woman. It would be a shame if something happened to her while her husband is in custody. The implication was clear. Huxley had a backup plan. A failsafe. Someone who would hurt an innocent woman if things went wrong. Ramona gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. This was a threat designed to make her hesitate, to make her doubt, to make her back down at the last possible moment. It was not going to work. She typed a response. You picked the wrong person to threaten. Then she blocked the number, started her car, and drove home. Tomorrow she would end this. Tomorrow Garrett Huxley would answer for every life he had destroyed. And no threat, no manipulation, no last-minute intimidation would stop her from keeping the promise she had made at her brother's grave. The team compound was quiet at 0645. Morning fog rolled in from the Pacific, wrapping the buildings in a gray shroud that muffled sound and obscured sight. Ramona arrived first, parking in the shadows near the east entrance where she could watch the approaches without being seen. Castellano arrived 5 minutes later. He looked like he had not slept either, dark circles under his eyes and tension in every line of his body. He joined her without speaking, and together they waited. Thornton's truck appeared at 0655. He parked near the ready room and walked toward them with the measured stride of a man heading into battle. His face was carved from stone, all emotion buried beneath years of training and discipline. He is inside, Thornton said. I called him 20 minutes ago. Told him there was an issue with the operational planning that needed his input before the briefing. Does he suspect anything? If he does, he did not show it. Thornton's jaw tightened. But Garrett has always been good at hiding what he is thinking. I suppose I know why now. They entered the compound together, walking through the fog toward the ready room. Ramona felt the weight of her sidearm against her hip, a reassurance she hoped she would not need. Huxley was dangerous, but he was also smart. He would not do anything rash in front of witnesses. At least, that was what she was counting on. The ready room door was open. Inside, Huxley stood at the map table, studying the operational documents for Tuesday's mission. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from focused concentration to mild surprise as he registered Ramona's presence. Wade, he said, what is she doing here? Thornton closed the door behind them. The sound echoed in the silence like a gunshot. We need to talk, Garrett. Huxley's eyes moved from Thornton to Castellano to Ramona, reading the room with the tactical awareness of a man who had survived 2 decades in the most dangerous places on Earth. Something flickered behind his gaze. Recognition, maybe, or the first stirring of fear. Talk about what? His voice was casual, controlled. Is there a problem with the mission planning? Ramona stepped forward. My name is Ramona Voss. I'm a special agent with NCIS. For the past 4 months, I have been investigating an intelligence leak that has resulted in the deaths of 3 American operatives. That investigation has led me to you, Senior Chief Huxley. Huxley laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is this a joke? Wait, what is going on? Thornton did not answer. Instead, he pulled out the tablet containing the evidence and set it on the table. Financial records from Meridian Strategic Solutions. Surveillance recording. Photographs of your meeting with a foreign contact at the Rusty Anchor 3 nights ago. And messages from your burner phone to someone called Phoenix, including detailed operational information about Tuesday's extraction. Huxley's face went pale. For a long moment, he said nothing, his eyes fixed on the tablet like it was a live grenade. I do not know what you think you have found, he said finally, but there has been a mistake. I have never heard of Meridian Strategic Solutions. I do not have a burner phone, and I certainly have not been communicating with anyone called Phoenix. The phone was in your locker, Castellano said quietly, behind a hidden panel. I watched Agent Voss recover it myself. Huxley turned on him, anger flashing in his eyes. You broke into my locker? You went through my personal belongings? We found evidence that you have been selling classified information to foreign contacts, Ramona said. Evidence that connects you to the deaths of American service members, including my brother, Petty Officer Marcus Voss. He was killed in Fallujah 3 years ago. You received $2,300 2 days before that mission. The mention of Marcus hit Huxley like a physical blow. His composure cracked, just for an instant before he rebuilt the mask. I do not know, he said. I do not know anyone would get hurt. They told me it was just information. Low-level stuff. Nothing that would put anyone in danger. Thornton's voice was ice. The messages on your phone say no survivors, Garrett. Tuesday's mission. 12 of your brothers. You're going to watch them die. Huxley's mask crumbled. The charming, confident operator vanished, replaced by something smaller, more desperate. You do not understand. Catherine is dying. The treatments cost more than I could ever earn in a lifetime. I did what I had to do to save her. You killed Americans to save your wife. Thornton took a step toward him, fists clenched. You betrayed your oath, your country, your brothers, and you stand there making excuses? I never wanted this. Huxley's voice broke. It started small. Just a few pieces of information. They said no one would get hurt. But then they wanted more, and I was in too deep, and I could not stop. He looked at Ramona with something that might have been genuine anguish. Your brother. I am sorry. I did not know he would be there. I did not know anyone would die. But they did die. Ramona felt the rage building in her chest, cold and controlled. Marcus died. 3 other operatives died. And 12 more were going to die on Tuesday because you could not say no. The ready room door burst open. Commander Whitmore strode in, flanked by 2 armed NCIS agents. Her eyes swept the room, taking in the scene with a single glance. Senior Chief Garrett Huxley, she said, you are under arrest for espionage, treason, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent. Huxley did not resist as the agents moved forward to take him into custody. The fight had gone out of him. He looked at Thornton one last time, something broken in his eyes. I am sorry, Wade. I am so sorry. Thornton turned away. He could not bring himself to watch as they led his best friend out of the ready room in handcuffs. Ramona stood in the silence that followed, her heart pounding with a mixture of triumph and grief. It was over. For months of work, for months of sacrifice, and it was finally over. But as she looked at the faces around her, at Thornton's devastation and Castellano's hollow shock, she knew that the real cost of Garrett Huxley's betrayal was only beginning to be counted. The hours after Huxley's arrest passed in a blur of debriefings and statements. Ramona sat in a borrowed office at Naval Special Warfare Command, answering the same questions over and over for investigators who needed every detail documented and verified. Commander Whitmore handled most of the coordination, her calm authority cutting through the chaos that Huxley's exposure had created. Tuesday's operation was reconfigured within hours, new intelligence vetted through secure channels, approach routes altered, extraction points moved. The mission would proceed, but without the death trap Huxley had prepared. By late afternoon, the immediate crisis had passed. Ramona found herself alone in the office, staring at a wall covered with commendations and unit photographs. Somewhere in this building, Huxley was being interrogated. Somewhere, His wife, Catherine, was learning that the man she loved had betrayed everything he had sworn to protect. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Riggs stood in the doorway, looking like he had aged 10 years since the bar. "Can I come in?" Ramona nodded. He entered slowly, keeping his distance, his usual swagger replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "I owe you an apology," he said. "At the bar. What I said. How I treated you. You did not know who I was. That is not the point." He shook his head. "I was cruel. I looked at you and saw someone who did not matter. Someone I could dismiss and insult without consequence. And the whole time, you were the only one who saw the truth about Huxley." Ramona studied his face, looking for any trace of the man who had grabbed her arm in the parking lot and threatened her. She found only regret. "Apology accepted," she said. Riggs nodded, relief flickering across his features. "Castellano told me what you did. Breaking into the compound, recovering the phone, confronting Thornton." He paused. "That took guts. More guts than most people I know. I had motivation. Your brother." He hesitated. "I'm sorry about that, too. I did not know Marcus personally, but I have heard stories. He was one of the good ones." He was. Ramona felt the familiar ache in her chest, but it was softer now. Less sharp. "He would have liked you, I think. Once he got past the attitude." Riggs almost smiled. "Yeah, I get that a lot." He left a few minutes later, and Ramona sat alone again, processing the strange twist of fate that had turned an enemy into something approaching an ally. The sun was setting by the time Thornton found her. He looked hollowed out, emptied by the weight of what he had done. He sat in the chair across from her without asking permission, his movements heavy with exhaustion. "They're saying he cooperated," Thornton said. "Gave up his handler, the communication protocols, everything. Apparently Phoenix is connected to a foreign intelligence network that has been targeting special operations for years. Huxley was just one asset among many. Does that make it better or worse? I do not know." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I keep thinking about all the times he looked me in the eye. All the times he told me he had my back. And the whole time he was selling us out." Ramona let the silence stretch between them. There were no words that could ease this kind of pain. She knew that from experience. "Catherine is devastated," Thornton continued. "She had no idea. All that money he was bringing in, she thought it was legitimate consulting work. She thought he was killing himself to save her life." She looked up at him, her voice soft. He was just not the way she imagined. Thornton met her eyes, and for the first time she saw something other than grief in his expression. Gratitude, maybe, or respect. "You saved 12 lives today," he said. "My men, they're going to come home because of what you did. They're going to come home because you believe me." Ramona shook her head. "I could not have done this without you." He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. It showed two young SEALs in desert fatigues, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. One of them was clearly Thornton, 20 years younger. The other was Huxley. "We took this in Afghanistan," Thornton said. "First deployment together. I thought he was the best man I had ever met." He stared at the photograph, then slowly tore it in half and let the pieces fall to the floor. "I guess I was wrong." He stood and walked to the door. "For what it is worth," he said without turning around, "Marcus would have been proud of you. What you did here, the way you did it. He would have been proud." Then he was gone, leaving Ramona alone with the torn photograph and the weight of everything that had been lost and found. She picked up the pieces from the floor and held them in her hand. Two young men who had once been brothers. A friendship that had been built on lies. A betrayal that had cost lives and shattered trust. She thought about Marcus, about the promise she had made at his grave, about the 4 months of sacrifice and isolation and fear that had led to this moment. It was over. The traitor was exposed. The mission was saved. Justice, imperfect and incomplete, was finally being served. But as Ramona sat alone in the fading light, she knew that some wounds never fully healed. Some losses could never be recovered, and some victories came at a cost that could never be fully measured. She tucked the torn photograph into her pocket and walked out into the evening air, ready to face whatever came next. 1 month later, Ramona stood at the edge of Marcus's grave in the Pacific Memorial Cemetery. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rows of white headstones, each one marking a life given in service to something greater than itself. She had not been here since the day she made her promise. 4 months of undercover work had kept her away, focused on the mission, unable to risk the emotional exposure that visiting would bring. But now it was over, and she finally had something to say. "I found him," she said quietly. "The man who got you killed. His name was Garrett Huxley, senior chief, 18 years in the teams. He sold your mission to people who wanted you dead, and he did it for money." The wind rustled through the grass, carrying the distant sound of waves from the ocean beyond the cemetery walls. He is going to spend the rest of his life in prison. Court-martial convicted him last week. Espionage, treason, conspiracy. They gave him life without parole. She paused, feeling the familiar tightness in her chest. "It does not bring you back. Nothing can bring you back. But at least now I know. And at least he cannot hurt anyone else." She stood in silence for a long moment, letting the peace of the cemetery wash over her. For 3 years she had carried the weight of not knowing, the burning question of who and why. Now she had her answers. They did not fill the void Marcus had left, but they gave her something she had not felt in a long time. Closure. Footsteps approached from behind. She turned to find Castellano walking toward her, dressed in civilian clothes, a small bouquet of flowers in his hand. "Hope I am not intruding," he said. "No." She managed a small smile. "I am glad you came." Castellano laid the flowers at the base of Marcus's headstone. "I never met him, but I feel like I know him now. Through you. Through what you did to find the truth. He would have liked you." Ramona touched the cold stone, tracing the letters of her brother's name. "He always said the best operators were the ones who asked questions instead of just following orders. Sounds like you two were a lot alike." She laughed softly. "He was the brave one. I just refused to give up." They stood together in comfortable silence, two people who had been strangers a month ago and were now connected by something deeper than friendship. Castellano had testified at the court-martial, his account of the locker search and the burner phone providing crucial corroboration. Riggs and Volkov had testified too, describing Huxley's behavior in the months before his arrest. Even Thornton had taken the stand, his voice steady as he recounted the confrontation in the ready room. The team had closed ranks, but not around Huxley. Around the truth. "I heard you got a commendation," Castellano said. "Some kind of ceremony next week." Commander Whitmore insisted. Ramona shrugged. "I tried to tell her I was just doing my job, but she would not hear it. You did more than your job. You saved 12 lives, exposed a traitor, brought down an entire intelligence network." He looked at her with something like admiration. "That is not nothing. It is not everything either." She turned away from the grave, facing the ocean in the distance. "Huxley's wife is alone now, sick and alone. And the men he betrayed, the ones who survived, they have to live with knowing that someone they trusted wanted them dead. That is not on you. I know, but it still hurts." Castellano nodded. He understood. They all did. Everyone who had been touched by Huxley's betrayal. The scars would fade, but never fully disappear. They walked together through the cemetery, past rows of headstones bearing names and dates and ranks. So many lives, so many sacrifices. Ramona thought about what it meant to serve, to give yourself to something bigger than your own survival. Marcus had understood that. So had the 12 men who would have died on Tuesday if she had not stopped Huxley. "What happens now?" Castellano asked. "Back to Washington? Another case?" "Actually, no. Commander Whitmore offered me a new position. Permanent liaison to Naval Special Warfare. I will be working directly with the teams, helping to identify and prevent insider threats." "You gonna take it?" Ramona looked back toward Marcus's grave, a small white stone among hundreds of others. "I think so. It feels right. Being here, working with people like you and Thornton. Making sure what happened to Marcus never happens to anyone else." Castellanos Maid. "The teams could use someone like you. Someone who sees what others miss." They reached the cemetery gates, where Ramona's car waited in the parking lot. In the distance, the sun was climbing higher, burning off the morning fog and revealing a sky of perfect California blue. "There is something I should tell you," Castellano said. "Thornton is organizing a memorial For Marcus and the other operatives, Huxley compromised. He wants to make sure they are not forgotten. Ramona felt tears prick at her eyes. That means a lot. Thank you. Thank Thornton. He stopped and turned to face her. But for what it is worth, I am glad you did not stay quiet. That night at the bar, when Riggs said those things to you, I'm glad you did not let it stop you. She thought about that night. The humiliation, the anger, the cold determination that had carried her through 4 months of isolation and danger. Stay quiet, idiot. The words had been meant to dismiss her, to silence her, to make her disappear. Instead, they had become the fuel that burned away everything except her purpose. I was never going to stay quiet, she said. Not until I found the truth. They said goodbye in the parking lot, promising to meet again soon. Ramona watched Castellano drive away, then sat in her car for a long moment, looking out at the cemetery and the ocean beyond. If you enjoyed this story, drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, character, or if you have had a similar situation happen to you before. We would love to hear your thoughts. She started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the cemetery behind. The road stretched ahead of her, winding along the coast toward Coronado and the new life waiting for her there. Marcus was gone. Nothing could change that. But his memory lived on in the work she had done and the work she would continue to do. In the lives saved and the truth uncovered. In the promise she had made and finally, after all this time, kept. The quiet ones see everything. And sometimes, when it matters most, they are the ones who change the world.